Hello Indiana Virtual. The purpose of this video is to give you a brief introduction to your next lesson, 0305 DNA replication. So we're going to go ahead and go to Buzz and open up the lesson 0305. And as always, we are going to scroll down to the bottom of this lesson and open up the DNA replication biology notebook. And remember, you can always go over here to our website and open up the notes document here, and we'll do a quick review of what it is we are going to be learning here. We're going to have history of DNA, discovering DNA, so we have a bit of a timeline here. Then we are going to document some information on the structure of DNA, the three parts of a nucleotide, the four nitrogenous bases, what types of bonds we have between those nitrogenous bases, and what bases pair together. Then we are going to talk about DNA replication and the steps that occur in which DNA copies itself for things like mitosis or meiosis. We are going to compare DNA and RNA, and then we're going to get into some of the functions of RNA. Okay, we will review the flow of genetic information in terms of two major processes, transcription and translation. And so we're going to go into the details of transcription, and then you will learn about something called the genetic code, so you can go into the details of translation. Okay, and that is what your assignment is about in this lesson, doing an activity. It's really more of a worksheet on DNA replication, transcription, and then translation. Okay, so we will go back to the lesson. Now we actually have 9 slides here, and so there's really quite a bit of notes that you're going to take throughout this lesson. So as always, read through slide 1 and document information on that notes page. When you're ready, go on to slide 2. And here you're going to learn about the DNA replication process. There we've got a little more information on Gregor Mendel. You have a whole timeline here, which you're going to scroll through and document that information on that timeline section of your notes handout. Okay, then we're going to learn about the structure of DNA. We have the nucleotides, we have the nitrogenous bases, hydrogen bonding, and base pairing. Okay, and then we go on to the DNA replication itself, and how DNA replicates. And then we have an activity here in which you have your original DNA strand, and then you're going to write down what the complementary strand, the strand that's been replicated, will be. Okay, so this slide here is all about the DNA replication. Document pictures, notes, whatever you possibly can onto that notes handout. Okay, and so now on this slide we have a little bit of an extension of DNA replication, but we're really getting into what RNA is. And we're going to need to be able to compare DNA and RNA. And we have 3 types of RNA: messenger RNA, ribosomal RNA, and transfer RNA. So with DNA, we have 1 type of DNA. DNA is DNA. But with RNA, we have 3 types of RNA. So you'll want to document that. Okay, then you will go on to the next slide, slide 5. And so now we're going to start to learn about that flow of genetic information. Here we have transcription. We have the steps of transcription, and we have an enzyme called RNA polymerase that performs the process of transcription. So transcription is kind of like DNA replication, okay, but DNA replication is when we copy DNA to DNA. Transcription is when we're going to copy DNA into RNA. Okay, and then you're going to get some transcription practice here, and this is pretty important. That DNA replication, you're going to repeat that on your worksheet. On transcription here, you're going to repeat this sort of thing onto your worksheet as well. Okay, when you're ready, then you can go on to slide 6, and now you're going to learn all about translation. But before you actually get into the steps of translation, you have to learn about something called the genetic code and how to read this chart. So make sure you carefully read through the information here to figure out how you use RNA to identify each amino acid. All right, and then you'll actually get into the translation portion. So now we're going to use, remember, on the previous couple of slides, we learned about transcription. Transcription, DNA is copied into RNA. Now we're going to use that RNA and interpret it into a protein, or interpret it into an amino acid, because what we're trying to build are proteins here. So we've transcribed the DNA into mRNA, And now we're going to translate the mRNA into an amino acid chain. And so our steps of translation are on this slide. And you have a couple review questions at the end as well. All right, and then we have some review between DNA replication and our slides go on here. My screen isn't quite big enough to show all of it. There's our model of DNA, and you're going to continue on. We have quite a few things here. There's a nucleotide, base pairing, DNA replication, and that's actually a little video here as well. And more on DNA replication, step 2. We had step 1, step 2, step 3 of DNA replication. And then review of ribosomes and RNA. And now we get into transcription. So here's a review of transcription, step 1. And again, that's a little video. Step 2 of transcription. And step 3 of transcription. And then we get into translation. And again, step 1. And all of these are videos. This is a really great review of this entire lesson, which can get a little bit complicated. There's step 2 of translation and step 3 of translation. Okay, so this lesson can be a bit difficult, so make sure you take your time, make sure you document your information, document your notes, make sure you really understand DNA replication before you go on to transcription and translation. Okay, and I will be back with a new video to go over this lesson. All right, thank you guys.